Hey guys, what's up? It's Dan Cherubin here. So, this was a private lesson that I did with Matt, and I obviously had the intention to have audio on it, but I actually left the microphone muted. So, I thought I'd do a voiceover. So, in this private lesson, it was an interesting private because Matt had already had some success working with his lasso guard, and he basically wanted to sort of look at some different situations. So, I asked him at the start just where he's been having some success with his lasso and sort of what sweeps he'd been working on and things like that. So in this situation right now, we're just looking at some of the things that he's been doing well. And then he went through some things that were happening to him while he was trying to achieve these things. And then we sort of troubleshooted some of those things through this private. So it was a really interesting private. It was a little bit different to what I normally get with privates, which are usually sort of like standard, like I want to work on this ABC. He'd really already had a game built, and then he just wanted to look at some more options for that game and some more ideas to help develop that game. So in this match, just going through, he's just showing me some of the sweeps that he's been working on, some of the successes that he's been having with those sweeps. And yeah, we're just talking about like a lot of the ideas that he's working on here of pulling his partner forward, using the lasso as like a leverage to pull his partner forward. So I mean, lasso guard itself is such a strong guard to work. Um, Matty's been working on this position for a long time now, and he's very, very accomplished in it. When you roll with him and he puts the lasso, it's very hard. So we're talking here a little bit about the use of the leg in the lasso guard in different situations. Here I'm talking a little bit about, we talked a little bit about lifting his partner. So a lot of his sweeps were these idea of loading his partner and lifting his partner over him. What I'm going through here is talking about, especially when your partner is, or what I'm talking about here is like the utilization of the leg, doing the lasso and utilizing it in different ways. So the ability to bring your knee to your chest to create an off balance and bringing their weight forward, but also the ability to stretch your leg straight to create tension, pulling down on the shoulder and breaking the posture. And then we're just going through some sweeps in here. I'm just telling him now about how we can start to break the posture. We can create increased tension on the shoulder with the lasso by stretching our leg, stopping our partner from being able to posture up. And then from here, we're effectively locking our partner into place. And then we can start to look at different options of sweeping. And in this situation, we're just looking at going under the arm and then creating a sweep to the side, almost a little bit like a butterfly sweep. Here, I'm talking about how we can also use this straight leg to look at attacking options, underhooking the arm, and then starting to sweep to the side. Because we already have the posture broken, and with the lasso, we're already taking away the post on the side. We're really exposing this arm, and we can take advantage of it. We can overhook it. We can underhook it. We can use our foot to the floor. You can see me tap my foot on the floor there. That's just posting my foot on the floor. Or we can bring our foot on the inside, creating a lasso sort of seated guard hook there too. So we have a lot of options that we can play around with. So now I'm just getting ready to have a feel of the position. So you can see how his leg is straightening there. So what's happening when he straightens his leg is that he's pulling my posture down. When his leg is bent, he gives me the option to move side to side. I can't move backwards very well or forwards very well in the situation when his leg is bent, but I can go side to side quite easily. But when he stretches his leg straight, it pulls my posture down, and it really affects the way that I can start to pass guard. So a really effective way, if you're out there listening to this, to um, control someone's posture, especially if they're on the knees, is to stretch your legs straight, almost as low to the ground as you can. And then I'm just emphasizing how the same idea can be used when you're trying to control the person's movement forward backwards or their posture, breaking their posture while they're standing as well. So, one of the key things I see is when people start to use lasso, they try to put their foot to the floor doing that typical Merigali style sweep. They keep their leg bent, the one that's doing the lasso between the legs, and they try to lift with their lower back muscles. What we want to do is we want to create a tension through the arm, the shoulder, break the posture, and then through that breaking the balance of our partner. And the way we can do that is creating a straight leg or a stiff leg between the legs. So you'll see here that my posture, my weight is kind of over my hips here, but when he straightens his leg, it's going to tip my shoulder forward. And as I tip my shoulder forward, it makes it much easier to off balance or even just to get me to react. So that way that he can then create an action reaction chain leading to another sweep, a submission setup, or a back take. So we're just talking here a little bit the importance of um, dancing between two, because you don't want to just have a straight leg all the time because the guard's going to be ineffective. So we do have a bent leg when we're in a control situation, but when we want to activate our sweep or activate breaking the posture or activate the manipulation of their base, we're going to straighten our leg. Now I'm talking a little bit about this idea I have when I'm doing lasso of a scooping drill or a sort of like scooping underneath them. So using the lasso and then the foot on the hip, and then the as a tension. So we've already broken the posture. We're going to go foot on the hip, and then before we went foot on the hip, and then we scooped in underneath to get to the X guard. Um, when I'm doing that, I'm just focusing on getting my knee behind his leg. This one, we're talking a little bit about when the posture's coming down, when he's dropping his weight down, trying to solidify his base so he feels threatened right now. I've got to make sure when I'm playing the lasso that I don't bring my knee across the center line of his body so that he can smash past me. Stiff legging is a really good way to do that. You can see I shift my weight out to the side to create space for him to land in. So yeah, this is just a little bit of the start of the private is just sort of going through the minor details of, yes, this is a typical, yeah. So see how when I try to back away and sort of get my body away to almost like run around that guard. As I drop, he stretches his leg, and now I'm in this prone position, this flatter position. Whereas when his knee is bent now, I have more options to move. But right now, it's very difficult to start to move. And of course, he's not going to hang around in this situation. This is just going to be something he goes to straight away, just to keep you there for a second while he sets up, and then he can start to sweep. And in that instance, he used his butterfly hook there, or seated guard hook, to complete the sweep. Totally optional. Sometimes I've done it with my foot on the outside where I just keep hip escaping away, creating tension, and the guy will fall to that shoulder. Most of the time I put in the butterfly hook just to help get the sweep over, create more leverage on the outside leg. Here we're also talking about some options that if we feel like we can't get the sweep, our partner's neck is just going to be sitting there. So this is not something that I would go to straight away. But we're just exploring options in this private lesson. This private lesson was about opening up more ideas and expanding on his already existing game. So it was like, right, let's talk about the fundamentals that you've already got with playing your lasso. Let's talk about how we can utilize that lasso leg to create tension and break posture and manipulate base. And then we just had a look at there are some submission options in there, obviously, as well. Um, Here I'm talking about just switching the hip. So I'm just talking about right now with my leg in the angle that it's on, it can be a little bit difficult to create tension. And when I go switch my leg on the inside, I mean my hips to the inside and square up with him, it just creates that tension. So having my body on the opposite side to the lasso is a really strong way to play lasso. Um, so now we're just talking about some options of how we can get into the lasso X, using the scoop method. So scooping my knee underneath to shift my hip under his base. And now instead of staying in the lasso, keeping the lasso, but just playing that between the legs. So now we have some really good control. Now I'm taking him through a sweep here that I do a lot. Where I don't sweep from, you can sweep from the X guard, but lowering that top leg down after you've set your lasso hook, your lasso X guard hook, lowering it down and manipulating the ankle. So as you're tipping the weight, you're lifting the ankle out. Now, one of the reasons I do that is because sometimes the guy, when I go to sweep from their Lasso X, they'll post their hand and they become active with their back foot. So by dropping uh, my high leg down low and taking the ankle away and using it as an ankle hook, or a low X guard hook, it's much easier for me to disrupt the base and stop that back active hook. So you can see right now when he goes into the lasso X here, he's sort of trying to get it with it. Yeah. So this is why we're looking at it. Now we can start to play it like this. So from here, it's much harder for me to be able to use my back foot as an active post if my foot is in the air. He goes to the lasso, he switches the hips, he comes back inside with the X. Now, you can see Matty's on the wrong angle here, and I sort of let him know later on. I'm like, you need to get your hips a lot more underneath, pull your hip a lot more further through. So we're trying to really create tension on the outside shoulder, the lassoed shoulder. If he keeps his hips on the outside of my base, it's going to be really easy for me to start to change angles and drop my shoulder and then crushing his leg down. So when you're playing the X guard or the lasso and you're going into X, you need to shift your hip as much as you can underneath your partner, almost like you'd be going out the back door, like you're going to the back. Keeping that hip out is going to create tension on the lassoed shoulder, pulling it down to the floor, breaking the posture. Just means that you have to do less work when you actually want to engage the sweep. So right now he drops the leg low. So he goes here. So I'm talking about how this foot is now going to become active. It's an active post. I can drop pressure on my partner in that situation and keep my post active. But if I do it and he's got my foot, I take away the ability for me to have an active post, making the sweep much easier to complete. Sorry, guys, I'm just having a coffee while we do it. So again, I'm just explaining a little bit about just making sure that we're creating tension on the shoulder, making sure that once we get underneath the legs that we're creating tension by shifting our hip under the base. And I'm just talking about, actively posting here. Your partner, whenever they're trying to be swept, they're going to use their posts and they're going to be very active with them, trying to stop themselves from getting swept. So anticipating which post they're going to be using as an active post and then setting ourselves up so that we can take that out and then completing the sweep much easier. So now we're moving on to another sort of situation here. And Matt was having a lot of success with this sweep, which is a really strong sweep. You can see what happens is he creates a sort of tripod situation. But when he creates that tripod, he flicks me over, generally over the shoulder. Most people do this sweep over the shoulder. Yeah. Pardon me. So what happens a lot of the time is people grab the pant leg, they go to sweep, and the person has an opposite post. So their leg is opposite to their arm, which creates this sort of tripod situation. And then normally you would pull them over to the shoulder on the lasso shoulder. You keep tipping him over to the lasso shoulder. Great sweep, but very, very common. And most people know this sweep and they start to defend the sweep quite well. So what I like to do is I like to create this action-reaction situation. You can see the configuration of Matt's body right now. He has to put, as I load him into the sweep, he has to put his hand on the floor. If he doesn't put his hand on the floor, he's going to get swept with the traditional lasso sweep. So what I do is I use that action reaction. I maintain the pressure through the sweep, knowing that he's going to put that hand on the floor. And this is going back to that anticipation. So he posts with his hand on the floor. He makes a nice strong position with his body to try to counteract the sweep. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my lasso leg now as a way to control and keep that pressure going forward. But now I'm using my bottom leg and I'm starting to work on tipping his hip to the floor. So this is a principle that I use a lot when I'm sweeping. Is I use what's called the ball and the rolling pin principle. You can sweep to do sweeps. A lot of the time, you're going to put you and yourself into a ball with your partner and roll over, or you're going to elongate your partner, make them long, and then roll them like a rolling pin. So both of them roll. just different situations. So you can see here that this situation, we're creating a rolling pin. It's like we're rolling it along the floor. From here, he's using his lasso leg to create tension, to driving me over my shoulder. And I obviously know that I don't want to get swept over my shoulder, so I'm starting to base back and I'm trying to post with my hand and base back, but he's keeping that pressure moving forward, which means that if I take my hand off the floor, I'm just going to get swept. So he counteracts that with an angle change and starts to drop my hip to the floor. Now, we were just talking about the sweeping situation. After this, you could roll up onto side control. You could cut back through, go for a triangle. You could spin back through, go for an arm lock. You can interpret the landing however you want, or depending on how the partner starts to react back against you. It's up to you. It's up to you, really. We were just talking about how we can manipulate the angle after the initial sweep, because remembering this private lesson was more about how to start to advance a little bit more, some smaller things um, built off the things that he'd already done. So we're not sort of going into finishing submissions and things like that. We're just looking at like ideas of like, all right, this is happening. Where do we go next? This is happening. Where do we go next? This is a really strong sweep. A lot of people sort of don't really go for it too much, but it is a very strong sweep. And we can also utilize this back and forward with the original sweep. So we can start to tip our partner's hip, and as they come back to defend that, we can go back to the first sweep as well. So we can create action, action, action. And each time our partner reacts, we can just keep working action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction until we get action, 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 and then we get the sweep. So I'm just explaining here a little bit about the idea of when you're leaning forward, you put your hands on the mat. As soon as you take that pressure off, the person can take their hands back off the mat. So creating that forward pressure and then maintaining pressure all the way through the position, that forward pressure, it takes the post away from your partner because they can't take their hands off the mat. Once you've created that post, you're just redirecting around the post, either to the right or to the left. So you create this forward motion where they place their hands on the mat. They can't take their hands off the mat because you increase that pressure, that forward pressure moving forward. It's a constant pressure into their post. If they do take their hands away, they're going to fall. But you can't sweep through that post. You can't keep just sweeping through that forward pressure. So increase that forward pressure, make it a constant pressure moving forward, and then just rotating around that pivot point, either to the right or to the left. And so that's what we're kind of introducing into his game right now. We're moving away from this idea of um, a singular sweep, and we're starting to create this action reaction. Now we're moving on to talking a little bit more about other things that he does. So he was telling me here about how he likes to invert. So if he feels like his partner, he's going for a sweep or something, and his partner starts to move around, he'll invert. And I really like the way that he's inverting here. Typically, when I'm talking to people about lasso guard, and especially in a white belt level, um, they'll tend to just twist their body around, almost like an arm lock style movement, like a closed guard arm lock style movement, with their head low to the mat. You'll notice here when Matty does it, he actually elevates his hips first, which is the correct way to invert in this situation to hide your head. Um, if you go more flat on your back and pivot more flat on your back, your partner can grab your head. So really, really big detail there is to when you're inverting is to make sure that your hips are coming off the mat and you're posting through your shoulder and your bottom foot. That'll also create a hinge for you to invert through. It'll give you more space to invert through. So it'll become a lot easier. So here I'm just talking about a sweep. We're talking a little bit here about like when people start to try to pass your guard around the outside. So here I'm telling him about a sweep that I like to do. And not to let go of the lasso grip in this situation. So your partner is trying to, crush your legs by actually kicking your knee through under the armpit and keeping the lasso guard, hipping out to the outside and using your foot on the floor. You can create a very, very strong sweep. But a lot of people, they'll let go of the lasso and then they'll just start to push their partner. So you can see here, as he comes around, I feel like I'm losing, but if I stop and block, I don't have any grips, I don't have any guard work at all. One of the things that I tell my guys all the time is to know what the difference between when you're retaining guard and when you're defending guard. You'll know the difference between the two. If you're retaining your guard off someone doing a guard pass, you have grips. If you've got grips, you're still playing guard, you're still retaining your position. If you're pushing on your partner, your hands are now not gripping and you're pushing on your partner, you're now defending your guard. So in this situation, a lot of people would start defending. They would stop and start to try to push. But what we're doing here is we're not allowing, but our partner has managed to be able to get around us. We're kicking that leg all the way through, maintaining our lasso guard, kicking the leg all the way through, just like we would do if we're putting it under the leg. But this time we're going to the outside and using our thigh and knee under the armpit. We're hipping out to the same side, away from them, and we're sitting up away from them. So effectively, we're almost like showing them our back. But because of the grips that we have, they can't take our back. And then from there, we can hip out. We're using the leverage of our leg and our knee to then move them to the side. When you're doing this sweep, really, really hip out as much as you can. All right. So you want to create as much space for your partner to fall in as you can. So you can see here, he's got the lasso. I'm controlling the bottom leg. All right. I come up into a tripod. I start to move around. He shoots the leg deeper through. I feel like I'm starting to pass the guard, right? So I'm going to start to put pressure. Now you see how he sits up there away from me, getting his head off the center line. We're talking about utilization of the foot on the bottom foot. And then as I come down, using my weight, switching the hip to create the sweep. He needs to switch the hip and he needs to sit away from me. Those two things are very important in this sweep. The reason that they're important because he needs to maintain control of my shoulder, my outside shoulder with the lasso, and he does that by creating tension. And the other thing is that he needs to create space for me to fall in. If he's laying in that space, I can't fall into it. By sitting up away from me and hipping out, he creates space for me to fall in. I guess one of the things that we're talking about here too is just not panicking when someone starts to pass your guard, that there's an ebb and flow of guard work and passing. And when you panic and you start to, uh, let go, um, that's when you're going to, start pushing and now you're starting to defend your guard. So maintaining your grips. And then there we're just looking at how we can set this up, even if they're not passing guard and they're sort of like, we've got good control, we can still set this situation up and still get the sweep from there. You can see how much I'm sitting away from him. As he's coming around to try to pass my guard, I'm really sitting away from him. But I'm not just using my knee. I'm talking here about my outside leg now. And watch, I'll switch to the actually, sorry, this was a secondary sweep. If we feel like we can't sweep them over to the side, we can roll back. So if they drop their weight heavy and they're like, no, I don't want to get swept, I don't want to get swept, we can use our outside leg to take out that base that way and slip back this way. So this is a little counter. Just if I'm going one way, we've got that first sweep. All right. I use my knee. I try to sweep. He drops weight. I drop weight really heavy down onto my legs. So then we can utilize like the rolling pin technique again, taking the base out, go back the other way. So again, we're creating these action and reactions. But this sweep comes off a situation where most people would just let go of their guard and start pushing and defending. So the importance of maintaining grips, understanding where you're still in control and how far through your partner is actually getting passing your guard, and when you're in danger and when you're not in danger, and when we can utilize taking advantage of the idea that people almost as they're passing, the closer they get to a pass, the less they start thinking about being swept. So, as they advance further and further through, their mindset starts moving towards more of a control situation. And even if they're not fully in control yet, they'll start to think about control subconsciously, and we can take advantage of that to sweep, submit, or take the back, or even just off balance to get our guard back. So yeah, this was a really good private lesson. This was it was a fun one, and Matt came in with some really good ideas of his own, and then to be able to build off those ideas was just awesome. Um, we I feel like he left the private with some really good new ideas and expanded his game. But they're very small things that we're talking about, very basic things. Um, so here we're talking a little bit about like inverting. Um, I think yes, we're talking about. He was saying that when he inverts and he starts to invert, that he tends to just get his guard back. And I was saying that's probably because as he's inverting, he's not elevating his hips. A lot of people just invert with a flat back. You actually do want to invert sometimes and extend almost like a corkscrew. So as you're inverting around, you're corkscrewing up to the ceiling as well. This can be a really good option to catch omoplatas and triangles, um, or to be able to put like a closed guard back in effectively as well. So of course you can invert lower to the ground with your hip, but if someone is standing, inverting and then driving your hips to the ceiling, extending your legs is a really good way of sort of setting a big net or a big trap for that person. A lot of the time, you'll find you'll shoot the triangle from that situation. You won't get it, but you will get you will start to attack the omoplata better. So in this situation, you see how his hips are flatter to the floor. It can be easier for me to start to pass his leg through. But if he elevates his hip, you see he's engaged his core and he's more on his shoulders there. That's where he's going to catch the triangles, catch the omoplatas, and be a bit more dangerous with his inversion. Lower to the ground that you are, and the higher your partner is, the harder it is it's going to be to control your partner. So you can see, look, just how well he already inverts with his foot, shoulder, hip. Now he's just engaging his core, shooting his hips up, and you can see straight away that his hips are already up high enough to start attacking that triangle or arm lock or omoplata. So you just, if they're standing, you want to attack, um, you need to drive the hips up. If you're just more looking to retain your guard, it doesn't matter if your hips are a little bit lower, but you'll probably more retaining guard. Now here I'm just talking to him about using this outside foot as the lasso foot now is transitioning to a hook on the back of the shoulder, and then we're using our shin and our shin sort of from our heel to our knee as a frame. So using our shin and now using this outside leg as a pivot, as a leverage point to create a sweep off it too. So we can go through like we're going to invert. We can drive our hip up, creating a block across the chest with an underarm frame. And now we can also go through looking to get our X guard as well, or even take the back off it. So if someone is standing and we're inverting, I'm just explaining that there are extra options that we can go to, that we don't always have to just go back to guard. We can start to sweep off our inversions. We can start to take the back off our inversion, and we can start to advance position off the inversion as well. So inverting is a fantastic way to increase your knowledge base of the lasso guard. If you do it wrong, it's hard because you're going to get crushed, or they can throw your legs, or they can maintain control. So making sure that you're really aware of where your hips are when you're inverting is key to having a good, stable inversion. You don't want to just be getting into the mindset of that inverting is just for retention. Inverting is for attacking. You're attacking your partner. When I say attacking, I mean sweeping, back taking, and submission attacks. You're attacking your partner with an inversion. Because even if you go back to a retaining position of the guard, if you try to attack, you always have the option to attack. If you only think about retaining, you'll only ever retain the guard. So just changing the mindset slightly uh, and looking at it as an attacking option is going to be more beneficial to you. Now, in that situation, I'm just talking about like as you're throwing your hips up, going for the triangle or the arm lock or the omoplata, that they'll probably posture and pull their arm out because there's nothing stopping them. There's no pressure coming down on them except gravity. So very easy for him just to pull the head and shoulder up. And as they do that, the lower body is going to be exposed for either single leg X, De La Hiva, or even back takes here. So you can really expand on your game by throwing that threat in, that idea of attacking with your inversion. You're threatening your partner with the inversion. You're not just inverting because you're under pressure. You're changing that pressure to an attack. You start attacking with the inversion, and now all of a sudden you have all these options that are popping up based off their reactions, that action reaction. Right here, we're just talking about exactly what I was talking about before. Just talking about how when we start to spin through, and even in any situation, not just with inverting, but even with sweeping, with back takes and things like that, there's always going to be a reaction. And in those reactions is where we can then transition to the next situation. So at DC Jiu Jitsu, one of our things we have on our rash guards and t shirts is catching between the movements. And that's based off this action and reaction idea or principle. So I was just explaining to him here that that's what we're trying to, create. The guard is not just something that you hold statically; that it's a very movement based, obviously. But those movements, even little movements, even little knocks and off balances and things, sometimes you're not trying to sweep your partner. Sometimes you're not trying to submit your partner. You're just trying to open their body up, giving you a sort of a playground to play around with. You know. So we're just recapping a few of the things that we worked on before. Just stretching that leg to control posture, getting the underhook. You could step the foot or use it as a hook. It's up to you. It's up to you. Sweeping to the side. Good one about the underhook sweep here is that you land with an underhook. So as you come up on cycle drill, you're already going to have your underhook. Just going back into lasso again. Boom. Controlling posture, underhooking, overhooking now. And the overhook grip we're using here is we're overhooking and actually grabbing the sleeve as well, opening up the option for the sweep or even submission here. So we can overhook, we can underhook in that situation. If we overhook, we want to make sure that we've got a good lasso grip because if he if I break the lasso, uh, I might be able to start to work some pressure on the pass. Going over that sweep again, so we went back to that sort of sweep that everybody knows. We're in the lasso, that tilt sweep, and then we're just talking here about just if I drive back up. So we're talking about dropping that hip down rather than so going for the sweep, they post, so then we take the hip to the floor. Then I was just saying to him, if he maintains his position and his partner sprawls up hard, he tries to regain his top position, then we can go to triangle, start to submit. If they stay low to the ground, we can go to omoplata. So using the foot to get underneath. So right there, he uses the foot on the ground to create tension. Now he's going to tilt my weight and see how his foot. Yes, there he needs to be right underneath me. Now the foot can go to the. Now he's taking away the active post. Well, much harder for me to use that back leg as an active post. Same thing if I try to get up. So now we're talking a little bit about how if the partner is unaware of the situation that they're in, they've just been swept, a lot of lasso guard sweeps will lead to triangles, arm locks, and omoplatas. because you already have the one arm in, one arm out when you land. So now we're going through the pass when I start to get fully through. Boom, bringing me over. You can see straight to the arm lock. So again, that one arm in, one arm out because of the lasso guard. Super strong guard. Very, very good. If you are struggling playing guard, definitely get in and play lasso and start to put lasso guard into your game because you're going to see success of maintaining position um, much longer in the guard. Then once you feel comfortable with the lasso, start to play around with that outside leg, that free leg, because you're going to be able to use it as a spider guard. You're going to be able to use it as a De La Hiva. You're going to be able to use it as an X guard, single leg X. You can mix with everything, right? So here I'm talking about when I drop my weight, I go to sweep, boom, we push the leg out and come up on top. So the first one is if I'm coming around really hard, he can switch out, make space for me to drop into. Second one, I drop my weight because I feel that tilt, and then he can kick my leg or he can pendulum swing my leg out. Talking to him here about a bit of a triangle setup. That's good. It can be very difficult to get, and I don't like that as much because I don't like to let go of the sleeve when I'm playing the lasso because I feel like just a quick hand roll around my thigh to the outside, he's going to be able to defend this. So I prefer to, I prefer not to do that. I prefer to do, I was just saying to him, I prefer not to do those sort of triangles. He would just ask me about that triangle setup, and I said, I don't really like to take that off. Here we're just talking about different situations where we can use grips. So we can start playing different styles of grips to achieve different things. So we're switching the grip from the same side arm to the opposite side arm, and then we can sweep off that too. So we're just talking about how you don't have to keep the same grip on the lasso here. You can switch the grip up and play a cross grip on the lasso, um, and how that can work as well for different situations to sweep and and take the back as well. So a cross grip's great for arm drags as well. It's a little bit harder to get the arm drag on the same side sleeve, but you can still, and it's still a fantastic way to do it. It just requires a little bit of more understanding. The cross grip allows you to really frame off your partner. So inversion, look at the inversion. Great inversion, nice high hips. The only thing on the ground at that point in that inversion is his foot and his shoulder, which is exactly how he should be inverting. Beautiful. Yeah. Now we start to look at inverting. Boom. Now keeping that leg as a frame, creating tension under the armpit, holding the leg. Now we can use his outside leg as a pendulum. Boom, and tilt sweeping me over. Almost, that sweep is a little bit almost like a Holetta sort of helicopter style sweep, but instead of the leg being in between the legs and the partner being on the knees, you're using the same concept. Um, you're using the same concept, just with a lasso and your partner standing. Very powerful sweep. I actually used this sweep in a competition back in 1998 as a blue belt against a very strong opponent, and it worked fantastic. I'll try and dig that out and put it up actually and show you guys. Yeah, 1998 Victorian Championships, I think. So again, we're just going over the importance of having high hips here, hiding the head so the head can't be grabbed. So you can grab my head. So if I invert through and I'm flatter, you can grab my head. If I invert through and I lead with my hips high, much harder to grab my head and control my head. Nice. He's got a great inversion, Matty. Oh, just looking at an arm lock option from the inversion as well. where he can lock his leg off in the triangle on the shoulder, above the shoulder, rotate through, creating tension on the arm, forcing me to roll, and then go into an arm lock. So yeah, you can also arm lock straight off that inversion. So if I feel like I invert up to get the triangle not working, I convert back through to that helicopter style sweep. That's not working. That doesn't work. Then I can triangle off and then start to look for the arm lock straight away as well. Different options for leg placement for the arm lock, just because your partner's probably going to hitchhike escape it straight out of there as soon as they land, because there's a lot of space when they land. But having your legs in different configurations create tension behind the back of the tricep and shoulder, and yeah, making it much harder for them to escape. Also, remember when you're putting your arm locks, guys, control the thumb, not the wrist. Thumb is the joystick to the arm lock. It dictates where the body's going to go, and yeah, you can do a lot of damage just with a thumb grip. And then shearing your legs sideways, creating a shearing action with your knees, not having your knees apart, close but shearing action, similar to when you're playing a half guard when they come through on a knee cut and you want to keep the foot. You don't go to a triangle position; you shear your legs. Could just say there's a couple of birds in the background walking around, must have flown in through the door. Um, Bit of a spin out. We actually had believe it or not, one day we were rolling and we had a possum in the middle of training. We had a possum fall from the roof onto the mat. So pretty Australian sort of thing to happen there. Possum fell out of the roof and landed on the mat while we were all rolling one day. It was pretty crazy. So I'm just explaining to him how we were rolling one day and everyone was just rolling. And yeah, possum fell out of the roof, dropped onto the mat. So we picked it up, put it outside, and it kind of just walked up a tree and was just like, whatever, sat up a tree. And we're all just kind of like, what the hell is going on here? So now I think we're getting back to jiu-jitsu now. Yeah, and Matt's just explaining here that he's having a lot of success and he feels like, to go to the next level, he's moving. He has some few set things that he's working on, which have been working really well. And he feels though that to expand that understanding, that he wanted to sort of just go through some different options again, what we went through today, um, just to give some new ideas. Um, a lot of the time when people already have a good understanding of a position, you don't need to go through 50 techniques of A, B, C, D. They already have a really solid understanding of the foundations that make up those that position. So when we're expanding the understanding of someone's knowledge of jiu-jitsu, a lot of the time it's just opening new pathways for them to explore. So really in this, I guess a big part of this private was looking at creating more angles off the same opportunities that he's already working, right? So yes, working those patterns that are strong and that are foundationally strong for his game, some of those things that he feels that he's comfortable with, but now just working new angles and some new patterns so that he feels that he has an expansion based off the things that he already does. If we introduce brand new things into the game, it's going to be really difficult. He has to go back and relearn all that stuff. But if we just branch out off that, um, then it's going to be much easier. Now, I just sort of thought this is towards the end of the private, but I was like, you know what? There's another little option that we have here too. When we have the lasso and we have this sit up and stretching our leg, we can start to do arm across and we can sweep, and I was explaining to him, we can take the back here. So we'd already gone over back takes previously in class, not from lasso, but I was just talking to before about the principles of taking the back. When you go to lasso, obviously you have a lasso guard, so it's very difficult to get to the back when you have a lasso in. But if we get the arm across, we can just let go of the lasso whenever we wanted to take the back once we've secured our back position. But we can also sweep off it if we need to. So we can, as we get the arm across here, so you can see I'm using the spider guard, I'm going to kick to the side like I'm going to try to sweep him. pull the arm across. Now, we're going to hug around the lat here. And generally, when people's arm goes across, they're going to want to try to pull it back. And as they pull their arm back, they need to shift their weight. So right here, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait here for a second to see what his reaction is. If he stays here, I'm going to go to his back. If he starts trying to pull that arm back and I feel that shoulder moving, that's my indicator to shift my hip into that space. Now I can start to roll him over. Don't try and drag your partner over. You're never going to get them over to the side. And if you do, it's going to be very, very hard. Once you've got the arm across, I like to wait a second and see where that shoulder's going. I'm not interested in the arm now. Once the arm is across, it's across. I'm keeping it across. I'm focusing on the shoulder line now, on in relation to me, where I am on his body, because I already know the arm's across. So I don't need to worry about where's his arm, where's his arm. I know where his arm is. It's the shoulder that's going to create the space for the elbow to come back to the opposite hip. So I'm really getting sort of sensitive on the feeling of where that shoulder is. Now, if I feel that shoulder staying in place, I'm going to go to the back. If not, and I feel that shoulder starting to slide back, I know that arm's going to be coming back, and I know that weight distribution is going to be falling. So I'm going to feel for that shoulder, and as it starts to lift and pull back, I'm going to shoot my hip underneath him. So that's what Maddie's doing here. We're talking about, hey, if I'm here and I'm not moving, let go of the lasso, climb to the back, right? If I try to bring that shoulder though, use it to sweep. Use the momentum of that weight coming back to the center. Get your hips to the opposite side, right? As the weight is in the center, we need to create an angle to one side or the other to tip me over. In this situation, he has all of the posts on my left-hand side there are all gone. But it's hard to drag me over because my weight is all on my right-hand side. The option is that he can take my back on that if I stay on the right-hand side. Most people's reaction is going to be to pull their arm back. Most people are going to do that by trying to pull their elbow back. If they do that and they get their elbow back onto the left-hand side, it's going to be very difficult for you to sweep or take the back. So feel where that shoulder's going. If that shoulder starts slipping, shoot your hip under, sweep off it. If that shoulder stays in the same situation, release the lasso, heavy leg on the back, and climb to the back. So this is another little sort of situation we're talking about action and reaction. So we go for a weak sweep, which is not a very good sweep. So he breaks the grip. I don't have the sleeve grip anymore. So his right hand side now is going to be free to move around it however he wants. I can go for a weak sweep here. Generally, these sweeps I find are pretty hard to get. Kicking the leg because he can just kick his leg over the leg. So what I'm saying here is once he goes here, right, go for the weak sweep, and now we can invert back through. So use the weak sweep, that weak tripod sweep where he's going to step out of, to get him to step back. Once he steps back, in the same moment he steps back, we can now shoot our hips back in for an inversion. So action and reaction. That's pretty much the whole sort of idea of this private lesson is this action reaction, right? That's what I was talking about before, where sometimes you're sweeping, you're not sweeping someone, or you're just creating a movement just to tip them side to side so that you can then get them to move so you can open up a situation. So that concludes the private lesson. It was a great private. I really enjoyed it. I felt like I got to also learn a lot out of that private too from Maddie's questions, because I got to re-go over a lot of things that I love to do as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry about the format. Next private lesson we put up, or next video we put up, I'll remember to unmute the microphone. Have a great day, guys, and see you soon.